For anyone who's new to Awake Shift, this will be our 3-day spiritualized human design conference happening December 5th through the 7th. And it will be at the Laguna Health and Wellness Center in Laguna Woods, California. And it's going to be an in-person only close-knit gathering where we weave together human design, spiritual teachings, astrology, movement, guided meditation, energy healing, body healing, and biohacking, and your kind of people. If you're someone who cares about your inner evolution and authentic expression, the whole weekend is designed to help you align how you live and work with your soul's blueprint and its various fractal aspects. And across the 3 days, you'll have access to live talks, experiential practices, and empowering sessions with teachers and healers like Sponda. So we hope you'll add your frequency to our 3-day soulful potluck. Again, it's December 5th through the 7th, and it's going to be a wonderful and perhaps pivotal way to begin 2026, which is just around the corner. All right.
Yes.
So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Sponda, who will be a featured speaker at Awake Shift. Sponda, would you like to take a few minutes to introduce yourself to anyone unfamiliar with you or your healing art?
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. How are you? And thank you, Davidian. My name is Sponda, and that's a Sanskrit word that means original or primordial vibration. And let's see, I was a psychic child. 4 years old, I had an awakening. I had a transformation and a bright light and an increase in my consciousness, my awareness. And then a very multidimensional childhood. I was a psychic child, and I saw, heard, felt, interacted with the ghosts, aliens, angels. It was a very kind of Harry Potter childhood. And later, I created a spiritual community called Soul-Based Living, in which two of our major pillars are meditation, mastery, and the energy healing modality called Supreme Bright Light.
So, uh, Supreme Bright Light, I've heard you describe it as the intelligent light of creation that you were asked to teach. Can you share the story of how that invitation first came through and what convinced you it was real and trustworthy?
Cool, thank you. Well, so to explain that, I have to say a little bit about my life, which is having the experience of spirit guides talking to me every day and interacting with me and feeling their energy, sometimes seeing them, and working with a set of spirit guides through my childhood until I was 13. And then there was a little bit of a gap in my teens. And then once I got into maybe 23, the spirit guides that I'm working with until today and beyond came forward, and there's always a conversation going on. And so we've become very familiar and comfortable, this group of spirit guides and myself. So I was in the grocery store and I hear teach people Supreme Bright Light. And I think I had a few things in my grocery basket. And I said, sure, to myself, I said, well, first of all, tell me what it is. And that sounds interesting. And they said, well, put the groceries back. Don't finish grocery shopping. Set everything back and go home. And we're going to teach you. So I put everything back, went home and spent a few hours as if I was in a class being taught Supreme Bright Light, and then began to share with people. And as far as I would say, as far as the proof of it or the knowing of it was people's reactions. So offering supreme bright light to people, and then they said there was a healing, there was a transformation. Many people have better fortune, meaning just things unstick and flow and become a bit more easy. And awakenings, and it can be a mental, emotional healing, a physical healing, or some blessings start to happen. And this has been reported over and over and over again. And the thing most people say is, I feel it. So it's not something just in their imagination. They feel heat, they feel energy, they feel like something is happening in the moment. The atmosphere is more spiritual. There's something sacred happening. There's an energy transmission that they can feel. And they don't have to be particularly sensitive to feel it. And then, so that's happened hundreds of times. I feel something's happening right now. And then maybe a week later, some things start to change for the better.
When you were in the grocery store, um, that communication, was that of the same frequency as was it a continuity of a continuation of the frequency of the guides that you'd been worked with before? Was this a different intelligence that came through, or the same from your early childhood throughout?
The early childhood spirits told me they don't work with adults and they won't interact with anyone that's going through puberty. So they said very clearly, we're leaving. You're not a kid anymore. Your puberty's coming. Formally, goodbye. That's it. Which was shocking for me because I'd never been alone before. And I think that's one big difference between myself and others is I've never had since 4, I've never been alone. There's always been presence of spirits and their voices and their comfort and their teaching, their helping, their answers. So I had a few years from 16 to 23 that I still felt a lot of energy, and there were, very multidimensional dreams and other things happened, but I didn't have any direct voice until 23. Then the spirits I'm working with from 23 to today and beyond came in, and it always feels like them. It always feels like the same group that's inspiring everything that I do.
How did that eventually crystallize into soul-based living in this specific modality of supreme bright light healing?
At first, it was just teachings. Even in childhood, it was just they'd say something as I was walking to school. And as I got older, the teachings got more sophisticated. And also, when I started doing psychic readings, I learned a lot about human beings, and that helped a lot. But over time, I noticed patterns in the teachings, and it became clear that there was something kind of organized that was happening, and I started writing it down. And I wrote it down in 2 places: in the Mission Inn in Riverside, California, a lot of it, and not as much, but some portion of it at Monrovia City Library, also in California. So those are 2 places I did the bulk. Today, the Mission Inn is still there. It's very beautiful, and we go to it as a community, and I like to visit with people there and be in that energy where I did that writing. The library in Monrovia was very small and very old, and that was torn down, and a big new modern library is in its place. So the library that I did my writing in Monrovia doesn't exist anymore, but there's a big modern library in its footprint.
Yeah, I think Raquel has a special relationship to the Mission Inn also.
Mm.
She went to UCR, and
Oh,
that's
cool.
a special place for her. Um, on your website, you describe enlightenment as a natural stage of human evolution rather than a rare exception. I was wondering if you could share what are some early subtle signs that someone is actually maturing into that stage versus just spiritually performing.
Great. Hmm. Well, certainly there's spiritual materialism where the person has an overlay of spiritual behavior and ideas on top of their still, um, I would say, clouded personality, clouded with angers, limiting beliefs, and fears. But they've overlaid some spiritual, actions and words and behavior. And we become more and more authentic. And as someone is what I call an emergent, a person that's experiencing enlightenment. And of course, there's some illusion of perspective happening because I believe we're already enlightened, just as the sun is always behind the clouds, even if you can't see it. But we're, from our perspective, from our vantage point, we're experiencing a process in linear time where we're becoming enlightened. It seems to be extruding or um,
Excavating.
yeah. It's I would say more a process of subtraction. So excavating is great because there's, even though it seems like it's a growing thing, it's actually like chiseling away the karma, and especially the angers, limiting beliefs, and fear, and our divine self is in there, and we're getting closer and closer to it as we get to awakening. And then when we do awaken, it's like getting closer and closer to a mirror because we're coming closer and closer to ourselves. But there's an inversion process where we're not looking at the spirit world from a worldly vantage point. When we cross that barrier and become enlightened from our linear time vantage point, we're in the spirit world looking at the human world from the vantage point of spirit.
Hmm.
So it flips.
There seems to be a misconception on what enlightenment is, where someone thinks it's them who's going to experience enlightenment when a big part of the them is what gets sloughed off. And it
Yeah.
kind of be a shock that you think there's going to be some bliss state that the mind is going to enjoy. Uh, do you find that when people get closer to that, uh, the mind can smell its own destruction and,
Yeah.
and may not really want to go full into the whole enlightenment process.
Mm.
Do you find that there's a period in your work where it's almost like a mid-enlightenment crisis, I guess, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
where the mind has to be talked down or it serves up all the obstacles and distractions to get them to become non-lucid again?
Well, I find that people don't really want enlightenment. They want the things they think they'll get from enlightenment. So why do you want enlightenment? Well, they, I've almost never had anyone say they want enlightenment for its own sake. Almost never. And I've talked to many, many thousands of people, maybe 10,000, I'm not sure. Especially during the uh, late 80s and all through the 90s, I was sometimes doing 15 sessions a day, for many days and months. I was seeing so many people and traveling so much. So I've talked to so many people. I don't know if it's exactly 10,000, but I guess somebody could help me count. But anyway, um, they say, I want peace, I want joy, I want these things that are not enlightenment. And I want less stuff, like less anger, less suffering. And enlightenment is not things. And you actually don't get anything out of enlightenment because you don't want anything anymore. But once you let go of everything, including this illusion of not the self, but the lower self, once you drop that, then all those good things come. But they're after effects of making a commitment to enlightenment. If a person really, really feels like they want enlightenment, it has to be enlightenment for its own sake, totally, and without enlightenment has to give me peace, joy, or something. It really has to be enlightenment for its own sake. And when you make a commitment to enlightenment for itself without other stuff, and even though we don't know exactly what that enlightenment is, because we're trying to describe the door, and all your description of the door is not the door.
Right. The
So
finger
the
pointing
sound,
to the moon is not the moon, sort of.
yeah. So all the things we want are our imagination of what enlightenment qualities are. Once we strip that away and try to make a holy communion with enlightenment, then you can merge, and a lot of the personality burns away, and there's a feeling of there's no ground. Feels like we're kind of floating. There's a kind of floating period. What is real, and is there any person actually here? Or if I just keep peeling away the onion, is there nothing there? So there's a very interesting time where there's a kind of floating quality. And then we have to make a personality on purpose. We have to choose a spacesuit of personality that can be the form we wrap enlightenment with. But it's a form of choice. It's
Is
not
that
a
for
it's
others or for the being, or as a like a consistent interface for another?
Yeah, well, I mean, ultimately there are no other people. The divine is experiencing itself through a bunch of hand puppets. Um, but and then paradoxically, we're all completely here and valuable and sacred individuals. So it's paradoxical. But one of the things is just for sanity. The mind is a house for the thoughts. So if you don't have mind, everything's just flying around. And we need ego. We need a persona. The ego gets you across the intersection without getting hit by a car. So you have to have a self that is not going to get hit by a car. So you have to be paying attention, you know, avoid traffic, be safe, take care of the body. Enlightenment would you just sit in meditation and starve to death. So, unless you're just going to become a hermit, as some people do, and do the minimal to take care of your body, if you're going to engage with family, friends, society, and for me, if you're going to help others, which is a huge part of my work, there is no soul-based living without helping others. Then there has to be a definite self that is solid, consistent, responsible human being that has the capacity to help others. So you have to choose a spacesuit for this cosmos to function within that. For example, I know Davidian, it's you immediately, not just by your face, but if I talk to you on the phone, you sound like Davidian, and Davidian doesn't sound like anyone else. So you're acting out Davidian sound. I act out my sound, and everyone else acts out their sound. And we know that there's no definite sound to your voice because actors prove that actors can change their voice, facial expression, body language dramatically. So we're performing. The difference between enlightenment and something that is behind the clouds of anger, limiting beliefs, and fears is enlightenment has a personality on purpose, by choice, and we're aware that we're performing a personality. And the human before enlightenment is acting out a default personality, not of their choosing or even their liking, because many people don't even like themselves. And struggling with karma, neuroses, all kinds of things, and ignorance and all kinds of things. And so there's you're on a ship, but there's no wheel, there's no sails, and there's no agency. And so with enlightenment, you are setting sail in the multiverse, and you're choosing, this is where I want to go, this is what I want to do, what I don't want to do, this is who I want to be. And you have not just free will, but that which makes free will possible to move in the universe, which is willpower. But we have to choose a definite self to be, and then, chip away the things we don't want to be.
Right. Like in a non-dual way also, would you say that uh, you get there by knowing what you're not rather than what you are?
Absolutely, because who we are is so amazing, it can't be comprehended. It's like putting a galaxy in a teacup. So we can never completely know ourselves. It's too huge and amazing. It's like the angels of the Christian Bible, and they say, "Fear not." And that's actually the thing the angels say the most is "Fear
Yeah.
not." And it's actually because they're so awesome. They're this explosion of light that shows up, and it's higher dimensional, and people just some pass out as soon as they're there, not out of shock, because their consciousness cannot be standing next to this being because of the vibration, and they go into unconsciousness because of the energy. But certainly it's a blinding light, and it's more intense than looking into 100 suns. And so it's so amazing, and so there's so much feeling about this angelic level, not just the blinding light and the power, but such a heart feeling that the angels have to, before they say anything, they have to say, "Fear not," and then they say. So we are that bright and amazing in our true self. And a lot of human behaviors to to avoid understanding how amazing we are.
There's these like city states, SIDDHI
Yeah.
states that people can reach um, as a tourist many times, some with psychedelics and doing it the fast way versus the earned way, we'll say, the slow, methodical way to reach these states.
Hmm.
I know that uh, heard about awakening and the difference maybe between awakening and enlightenment, but there's also this when reaching this level of perspective, let's say,
Mm.
many people, it's transitory. And what is the difference between how do you know when it locks in a state versus a period of time that you have access to the state?
Mm. Well, it's occurring to me to describe the analog to understanding a language. I was in Japan for 3 months, and I started to understand some of what was being told to me, and I couldn't quite put it all together, but I could say a few sentences. And then the difference between that and just being completely natural and fluent, and that you don't even think that you're speaking English. It's just happening, and you're hearing English and speaking English, and it's so natural that it's like when you learn how to drive a car and you don't even have to think about what you're doing anymore. Of course, you need to pay attention, but it's so automatic and so natural and seamless.
Like an unconscious competence, would you call it?
Yeah, it's like not having to worry about your heart beating. It's doing it. And there's so
An
much more.
unshakable state, would you say? Before you answer, that's the issue I have with the ascetic guru on the mountaintop,
Mm,
who's away from all the triggering lower life forms that could remove them from that state, versus the guru who goes back down the hill and has to. That's the true test of how can
Hmm.
you stay in that state. Of course, if you remove yourself entirely, then there's nothing there to trigger you. And
Yeah. Yes. And yes. And another thing would be that you don't want to keep rolling around in the mud. So it's not like you want to test yourself. It's more some things are you don't want to be around anymore. You don't want to you don't you if you want to help others, which is where I'm coming from. It's about it's not all about helping others because we have to be our best self in order to do our best for others. We have to let go of interacting at certain states and with certain people in order to develop ourselves and then have the capacity to be a bigger help. And that doesn't require hermitage. You
yeah,
can do it in the city, but you need you need time. You need to cultivate your energy. It would be like, living in the modern world and saying, I'm going to become uh, this world-class dancer, or I don't know, gymnast or mathematician or something. It takes time and energy and commitment. It takes you have to let other things go if you want to do something at a very, very high level. And not everybody wants to do that. There's a certain personality that wants to, and I think that's why certain people are attracted to me, that they're already they were already a champion swimmer, or they're a movie director. They have these competencies. They want to put other things aside and do something at a very uh, high level, whether that's a very high fine art level or scientific level or a gymnastic level or something like
in earnestness,
that. Yeah, there's
dedication.
a passion, dedication, commitment, and an excitement that, I want to play the piano at this level because that's what makes my heart sing.
Speaking of level, do you think that, um, well, do you feel that? Do you live that? Uh, Enlightenment is not a finish line, that there's also another level of deepening and learning that comes with that? Or do you see it as you've reached the end of the capacity to learn and
Hmm.
experience and grow?
Hmm. Well, most individuals and uh, most organizations don't talk about after enlightenment because they don't know. And if they had a founder or teacher, the teacher didn't record that, or for whatever reason. And so the idea of most, the vast majority of our ideas about enlightenment are coming from the unenlightened. So the reason enlightenment seems like an end because that's the end of the false self. That is the end of the story for that version of the person. And so there is nothing after that for I would say, the lower ego, the uh, the um, the ego that is still behind these layers, including anger, limiting beliefs, and fear. And so there's other stuff, but that's major. And so once you're enlightened, it's the beginning. You're a baby again, and all of the you know it would be like everything before enlightenment is the lobby of the movie theater. Everything, everything, including our ancestors and all the hundreds of years behind. And the experiencing enlightenment for the first time, and that's from our linear space-time perspective, and it's not actually happening like that. I call it an illusion of perspective or vantage point. Enlightenment starts when the the lights come down and the movie starts. So the movie doesn't even start really until enlightenment. And there's so much more. It's the inner universe is many, many times more massive than the outer physical universe.
How do you understand time in this work?
Well, as the human part, or the part, the comprehensible human part, as people understand it, falls away, I do lose things. There are trade-offs. So I can't fit into my childhood clothing. And
You
I
neither?
don't, hmm?
You neither? I mean, what do you mean by that?
I
Can you
can't
say
fit
more about
into
that?
my childhood clothes. Um, I can't go back. And so I lose some things, including how I used to understand things. So as I'm engaging with, let's say, linear time, it's from my vantage point in the multi dimensions of light. And it's kind of like the time traveler. Once they start time traveling, you're not an individual in one linear time. Now you're in the future, the past. You meet a version of yourself that's in the future, and they come back, and you meet a past version of yourself, and there's many of you. You're not an individual anymore. You're the many people that are traveling, and you can keep meeting yourself. And now you're a group of time travelers. And so you're not an individual before you discover the time travel ever again. So that's a death, it's an end. And so I can't see time from the perspective of before. And my situation is very unique. Um, Not, well, it's rare, let me say that, because I had my awakening at 4 years old. So I've never been alone. I've always had help, answers, energy, support. I didn't ever have to wonder what am I doing with my life or what am I going to do when I grow up. So it's many, many, many things that is the human experience. I never I don't have. And the kind of fear that many people have, I can hear it, but I don't really completely understand it. Or the idea of being separate and alone is it would be like trying to imagine not being able to speak English. How do I do that? I can say, okay, I imagine I'm not speaking English, but how would you really do that in a practical way? I can't
And that,
really
are you saying
imagine it.
that's the analog back to the language? You
Yeah.
lose memory fluency, so you can't remember as well. First of all, the memories weren't generated. If you awakened or became enlightened at age 4, then there's not too many memories after that that you can't access because they're all in that language of now, right? Pretty
Yeah.
other than the gap
Mhm.
period. But even, are you saying that to reflect back to that gap period up into age 23, that for you to go back to those memories, you lose the language of being able to identify with that version of yourself, or what? How would you describe
Yeah,
that?
I think so. It's the difference between, let's just pick Japan because I like it a lot. So everything that you think and feel about Japan before you got on the airplane, and you're getting your passport and it's going, this is going to be fun. And you've watched videos and you talked to Japanese people that were born there and all of that. And then when you land, it's totally something else because you're there. And you can never go back to the version of you that had never been there before. Now there's this whole other space and
Right.
all the tiny little things that are different and how people are and the architecture and the old and the new and how they talk and how they interact with everyone. And you're changed forever. You're changed forever. And you can imagine what it was like before you went to Japan, but it's always from a different vantage point.
sort of like a stone path over a chasm where you no longer have the previous stones that led you to this place. Now you're hovering from this spot, unable to step once again or retrace your steps as this new iteration.
Well, the very first time you cross that bridge is, I am about to cross the bridge. And then you cross the bridge and you can never do that again. If you go across the bridge again, it's your second time and your third time. It can never be the first time again. And
That's
so,
like you can't have your cake and eat it too, of sorts. Or
yeah,
you can't have your cake and eat it too, which is
yes, yes,
um and you've already eaten the cake. So there's
it's
no going
done.
back to not having
Yeah,
had the cake. Right.
yeah, it's a memory. It was like that tasted good, but it's not, you can't access it anymore. And the next cake is the second, you know, cake that you have. It's never the first one again. And so once you get into enlightenment, uh, you really can't go home again. If you go home, it's different because now you're the version of you that went traveling. So, and things fall away. A lot of just knowing that we're not separate is a huge change because instead there's a certain energy. I call it spiritual atmosphere. There's a certain energy to there's this other person. And I know that there is another person, and I respect that and I honor this person and their freedom and all of that. And I also paradoxically know this is me,
Mm.
but not just the person, the house, the front lawn, the sky, the birds. It's all me. And they are me looking from their vantage. The bird is looking at me and it's looking at me from the sky, and I'm looking at it from ground level. And they're both me,
So is
but
there an
different.
absence of nostalgia in all its forms?
Well, I'm actually a very nostalgic person, um, because maybe another kind of paradox is I can so vividly and deeply and beautifully engage with other times, even centuries or millennia ago. But certainly anything that I can really grab onto, like music or film or something where I can really, taste it. It's so amazing to see someone singing in a 1930s film or something. And I see a lot more. I'm getting a lot more. The curtains behind them and the carpet and the clock on the wall. There's a lot going on in the physical universe. And the pre-enlightenment person is looking at kind of cardboard cutouts of things, photo, floor, desk, and we're not really looking. We're not really looking. And when we're enlightened, everything leaps out in the way that people that have done psychedelics mention that when they've done something transportive, they say everything comes alive and is very scintillating and crisp and sharp and amazing. And so just the cup is fascinating when they're high. But that's my everything is fascinating. The pan, the table, I'm really easily entertained. I could just like, wow, the table is amazing. The plant is amazing. Everything's so fun and exciting, kind of like a dream. In a dream, we can be so fascinated by,
Mm.
the room. Like, wow, this is a cool room. Especially when we're lucid dreaming, you don't
Just
need
gonna say.
anything exciting to happen in a lucid dream. You can just trip out on, I'm lucid dreaming and wow, look at those carpet. I remember having a lucid dream and saying, I was talking with people in the dream, and I recalled that I was dreaming halfway through the conversation, and I stopped talking to them, and I got on my hands and feet and was feeling this very, very beautiful rug, the most beautiful rug I've ever seen. And I'm just touching the rug on my hands and knees and saying, "This rug is so real. This is fantastic." And they're looking at me like I'm crazy, like, why did he get down on the ground and why is he rubbing the carpet? And then I woke up.
I had an
Um,
identical experience with that with a brick wall. becoming lucid and then looking in and feeling it and just noticing it. It's indistinguishable from anything I would see waking up and just marveling at that. Lucid,
Yeah,
just that alone is just mind blowing.
for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm paying attention. I'm talking with people and having fun, and oh, tell me about your life and your family and all that. And I love to hear all that stuff. And the whole world's very distracting because while they're saying even the most amazing thing, I'm looking at the flowers or something and saying, "Wow, that's really cool." And I have to do it in a way that doesn't seem too strange. I don't want to. I'm pretty strange, but I don't want to be off-putting. It's like, oh, Sponda was paying attention to the flowers the whole time and wasn't listening or something. So it's a lot, but then people are so amazing that and to be honest and share kind of secret stuff with you and the audience. I am having fun when I'm talking with people, and I'm really having fun with while I'm meeting someone, their hat, their coat, the fabric of their shirt, and I'm really the buttons on their sleeves. It's really cool. But I don't want to stop and say, "Oh, your buttons are so fascinating," because that seems a little weird. So I just kind of toned that down, but it's happening. Everything's very cool.
When you talk
Even
about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
well, I was going to say even an old broken thing or a rusty gate or something. Everything's
Sure.
beautiful.
Oh, yeah. I remember being in Sedona and I was looking at a manhole cover
Hmm.
that had its own personality and with what is the word? Um, where everything has a soul. It's not panspermia. Um, everything is conscious, basically. Where you look at the consciousness of the different uh, inanimate objects, everything holds some life in some form,
Yes.
and the
Yes.
recognition of that. When you were talking about when you look back at these previous like the 30s, were you referring to past lives that you're connecting with or multiversal selves? What were you connecting to in that when you were describing?
Mm. Yeah, in many ways, including alternate realities, uh, literally, well, maybe I shouldn't say literally. As someone that's better at English than I am is going to say that's the wrong usage.
Figuratively.
Figuratively, um, there, like touching something from the 30s, for example. The brown hat, the second one down here is older than I am. I'll be 61 December 19.
Wow.
And so it's about 70 years old. And so touching old things is really cool. And also just from a film, watching a film.
Do you believe you can that incarnations work linearly? Could your next incarnation be in the past? Can we incarnate in different places? Is it sometimes to, especially as coming as an enlightened teacher, if you incarnate your next life back in the old West and bring that level of consciousness up, it's just an interesting concept of not everything is a future setting and the idea of raising the consciousness of the past, all levels of time and space. How does that work?
Mm. Well, for me, well, there's shamanic time. I call it shamanic time or layers and levels. There's circular time, the little town that you can go back 50 years later and nothing's really changed. And much of the world was like that for most of history. And then the innovation called linear time, where you go back. to that town 50 years later, and there's skyscrapers, and there's all this stuff happening. So there's different kinds of time. Uh, and so you can engage in various ways with things through different kinds of time. And certainly, one thing we practice with Supreme Bright Light healing art is sending healing into the past. And several people have even started practicing Supreme Bright Light because once they engage with me and find out about it, one person had a dream and said a future version of them was sending them Supreme Bright Light. And they said, oh, in the future, I know Supreme Bright Light, so I'd like to begin. Another person knew my name 20 years before they met me. He had a dream about a person named Sponda.
Mm.
And so there's experiences in dream time, future. The future self is one person just recently had a vision in a meditation that they were doing something called couples Supreme Bright Light, and that made them want to start. And so we're with this person that had that vision of couples Supreme Bright Light, we're creating it. So their meditation vision created this new kind of Supreme Bright Light where two people do it together.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit. With regard to your students and mission trajectory, what patterns, if at all, do you see over and over in people who are genuinely called to serve, but still feel blocked in bringing their mission to form?
Do you mean just in general or in soul-based living specifically?
I would say in general, if just what first in general, at least,
Mm.
what do you
Mhm.
see are common obstacles one must navigate around?
So yeah, because there's something blocking. So there's something I call the process self. The self, our story of process. It's our narrative. I'm here, I want to go there. And many people are really having fun with not being there yet. And they're not really being honest with themselves or in conscious contact with how much they're engaged in the I'm not there yet. So I want to be a scientist. I want to be a race car driver. I want to be an actor. And their life is about that wanting and that they're not there. And I can't remember the famous writer that said this, but he said, writer's right. And so we have to do it. And if you're serious, if it's not just because most people are playing and dreaming about the thing, financial freedom or romantic partner, or they want to learn how to sew or something, but they don't get there. And there's, of course, the stuck. There's the anger, limiting beliefs, and fears. So that's the process of subtraction that can be done through spiritual psychology, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also simply the addiction to there's some hit, there's some addictive adrenaline, there's something exciting and addictive about they're more excited about climbing than getting to the top. And we have
Hidden
to,
gains, would you call that? Hidden gains? Like they're getting
yeah,
something out of staying stuck or
yeah,
being in
yes.
victim, attention, love, or whatever it is that's feeding them must be acknowledged to stay
There's
in it.
definitely there's definitely the person that keeps getting sick because that's the only time they get attention. Or they will give themselves permission to be cared for. So there's a lot of that.
Mhm.
So I really think what are we getting out of the thing that you're trying to get rid of?
Right.
Because before you can get rid of it, you have to see the secret motivation the subconscious mind has for poverty, illness, strife. bad luck, whatever it is. And we have to disassociate from that and grieve it and let it go and move into a new reality and accept that we're not going to keep, infinitely playing with that thing, including being in a process, because for many billions of people, the world is a kind of insane asylum, and for others, it's a hospital where they're just in healing mode. I'm sick and I'm in my process of healing, and that's much more interesting to them than to gain mental health and gain physical health, gain emotional health, and get on with it, get on with the stuff, get on with why am I here?
Right? It goes back to what you said earlier, uh, maybe with regard to an addiction to there being a process. I have to start here, then I have to go through this, and eventually I'll end here. When it goes back to you are what you're looking for already, it's already here, but you want to make it into a process, and that's how you believe you need to get there rather than it being spontaneous. And that you people don't buy. They think that there needs to be a journey. So then a journey is offered. Sure. Okay, this can be your teacher. You'll go through these steps. You'll earn this, and however, you'll reach this state that you've already had, but you needed to hear it that way. So that's how it's being rolled out at your service.
Especially emotional permission. Uh, because I can't just be okay. I have to suffer, or I have to go through a long process. And I will say that people who, and I know people that have had spontaneous awakenings. They did, well, what did I do to earn this awakening at 4 years old? I certainly wasn't meditating or praying or anything. And people say, well, maybe it was past lives. Who knows? And so, but what about the person that was, I know one person in particular who was just a complete atheist. I said, well, what happens after you die? You just turn to dust, nothing. Life has no meaning, just be a human. And he had a spontaneous awakening. And he has, in my opinion, quite a high enlightenment. And so why did that happen? Where there's another person that spent 10 years so dedicated, why did the spontaneous thing happen? So nature's fascinating. And however, because he hasn't done the work, he has the awakening, but the personality has to catch up. So there's still a lot of process, and it's really fascinating because he's so plugged in and so aware, but there's a lot of learning to do as opposed to the other way around. Learning and then uh, preparing for the journey, as so many people do through meditation and doing good works, or again, the spiritual psychological healing.
It's interesting how awakening can be both a verb and a noun, and a result and a process. Would you say awakening is synonymous with enlightenment, or not the process, but the noun form of awakening? Would you say that those two are synonymous or used interchangeably, or would you discern one for the other in a particular way?
They're used fairly interchangeably, but when I want to be more precise, I will say awakening as the process and enlightenment is the being here.
And how do you I mentioned this earlier, and I don't not to be repetitive, but
Mm.
to try to understand the how to discern awakening from an experience of awakening versus a lockable state, one where you're not a tourist, one that you are fluent in, let's
I like
say,
that.
um,
Yeah.
because I've seen friends and colleagues reach a state where they feel they're awakened and they get rid of all their stuff and they're going to live this way. And then they're back to being Larry on Tuesday and
Mm,
now sitting in an empty apartment
right.
and
Or they
it's
sold their house.
very
Now what?
destabilized. Right. And I don't know if that'd be called a false awakening. What do you
Mm.
have to say about that?
Well, one of my favorite people, she went to India and had this awakening, and then she came back home after some months and just crashed. It not only did it all fall away, but she became depressed. And it was very hard to integrate because you have to chop wood and carry water. You know, you come home and there's bills and you have to do stuff, right? You have to, your utilities and stuff. So, because the process of making the personality by choice has not occurred, there has to be a falling away of the false self, or even if it's not so much false, it's just a self that you didn't choose. You just got it from your parents, from society, and you didn't say, it's just like everyone's wearing green and you just go along with it and you never questions, well, why am I wearing green? It's just an unconscious, life by default. And so because you cannot fit a galaxy in a teacup, you can't use what was before to function in enlightenment. It won't work. And so a new self, one of choice, and it's a choice self. So you're wearing clothes. Before that, you don't know you're wearing clothes. You think this is me, my body's me, or my personality's me, or things like that. Even some spiritual organizations say you are the mind. And I just think, wow, um, you're watching the mind. It's definitely not you. And so we're something undescribable that's not very helpful, I know. But once you get there, you have to wrap the light in something. And so you have to perform. Everyone's performing, but when you're enlightened, you're performing your personality. And it can be very similar to who you were before, but you're never fooled by it ever again. You don't take it so seriously anymore. I just laugh at myself all the time and the, particular things about the personality. And it's as fun as, looking at the flower. And it's never completely serious ever again. And so, that's what I want to say about that.
Seems like the difference between an identity and a persona, where the persona is the thing that is required to pay the bills in the enlightened state, and a
Hmm.
persona is adopted as this is my 3D caretaker, custodian, pay the
Mhm.
bills, interface, share my perspective, the mind and the personality in many ways, but it's
Yeah.
not the identity. Whereas those two, persona and identity, can be confused by a
Hmm.
non-lucid person unable to differentiate a self from in a non-dual way recognize who is it that is performing these tasks, and they just assume, take a mental shortcut, oh, it's me and I'm wearing green because that I don't have any context to not to question that, and then
Yeah.
the persona gets separated from the identity, and it's
Hmm.
the persona being a tool for the identity in a way to get stuff
The
done, feed the body,
the
you know.
in another kind of paradox, our human personality that's wanting enlightenment is an amazing tool for getting there. We have to be really curious about, oh, this is how my personality works, and this is how my mind is this way. And when I eat this food, that happens to my mind. And when people talk this way, I have that emotion. And we really want to get into the art of being a human being and understand ourselves. Why do I act this way? Why do I talk this way? How do I, why do I react this way? Why is this my life? And get curious and interested in it. And then the personality can actually, because we're not just trying to annihilate the personality. It's really the personality then can become a coworker with the light when it's done consciously. And that starts with real curiosity about why am I this way? Not just the insane asylum or the hospital. It's not just curative. It's not just I'm broken and I need to be better, because that's an illusion also. It's more art. It's more the art of being, where you get really curious and interested in, why was I born this way? Why is my body this way? Why is my personality this way? Why are my emotions this way? And getting really curious and interested and active in life from a point of view of someone that's fascinated and wants to be a student of life and learn about being a human, and not it just being about shedding the personality or curing it, but love it, enjoy it. I mean,
Absolutely.
we're here to be human.
And we've just reached our Venn diagram of our work, because this is human design as well.
Mm,
The personality and who you think you are, and becoming curious and not demonizing the mind is great for a great number of things, sharing your perspective, conceptualizing, but it's not the whole show. In fact, it's the body's life with human design, and the mind is basically a dumbed down avatar of your immortal soul who doesn't is not connected in this state to divine providence, whereas the correct position for the mind is as passenger. So in human design, there's a cultivation of something called passenger consciousness, where you realize you're here to watch the movie unfold. You're not driving the vehicle. Your body is. And you're here to sit passenger, not try to direct things. And the personality, there's a whole, it's basically kind of, I say basically, but distilled down, it's essentially the mythology of it, we'll say, is that your soul on some level chose this life to learn and picked this body, this great tour guide to experience, and you sit passenger, but the mind forgets all that, forgets it chose this tour guide, and tries to get in the way because it thinks it knows where it's going. My teacher, rest in peace, would say that the mind is like a small balloon tethered to the top of a freight train, thinking it's in charge of where the freight train is headed.
mm,
And
mm,
going 88 degrees in a different direction. So it's fascinating. Yeah, the mind is not bad. The mind's great for what in human design is considered outer authority, for helping others, for giving
mm,
advice, for sharing your perspective. And then it's your own inner authority that the other person would have to say, yes, this is correct for me. This isn't. This is a good decision. This isn't. And it's not based on what the mind says, which is transitory and largely affected by the energies it's absorbing and amplifying from other people, which creates a voice in their head narrating that a person adopts as their own, when it's really more so conveying another's perspective or those people that they spend quality time with. And we're all just sort of backwards thinking who we are and living our lives out based on other people's energies. And the mind doesn't
mm,
care what you are, it doesn't show up as a voice in your head. So it's not telling you to be more like this or more like that. You just are 24/7 broadcasting a signal that other people are absorbing and amplifying and adopting as their own. And it creates quite a fun movie to watch. But yeah, there's some cross synchronicities in
mm.
that. So um, you mentioned poverty earlier. I caught that word. How would you personally define abundance so it doesn't collapse into money? And how does Supreme Bright Light support that expanded definition?
Well, abundance is being in the dream and it becoming reality and we have to grieve that it's not a dream anymore. And there is, even when we have to grieve when good things happen too, because we have to let go, we have to say goodbye to the person we were before and inhabit the reality. So it abundance is being in the ideal reality, or you can say alternate reality or timeline, where it's happening, and not that you're on the outside, or you're in the process of it's coming, because people can live their lives away just getting closer and closer to the thing they want, and then they run out of lifespan, and that's it. So abundance is being there, and I'm in my chosen reality. I'm inhabiting it, and it's not a dream anymore. And we have to let go of the excitement of it's not here yet, and be in the joy of I'm doing it, I'm living it, including it's not the reason some people don't get to abundance, whether that's an abundance of money or health or happiness or whatever it is um, when we get there, even though it's amazing to be in our ideal reality, it still has stuff. There's still disagreements, and if you're in your dream house, you just have to vacuum it. So when it gains reality, it loses its dreamlike quality, and it's not idyllic anymore. It's, you know, you get your dream car and you have to change the oil. It's, that stuff. It gets the trappings of reality. If you're going to be in the reality, it has the whole reality, including, the rose has thorns. And
Right.
many people don't want their dream flower to have thorns, so they'll just keep the imaginary flower without the thorns. And that's a big subconscious motivation for never getting to the life that people are saying they want, because they want the perfect version that's in their head and in their heart. And they don't want it to lose that shine of reality. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. There's certain people that want to get into the reality of their dream, and you have to change into the person that's real for. All the outer work is fine. You can do outer exercises and outer efforts to get to your ideal reality. But until you change into the version of you where that's real for you, you'll just keep it, you'll create it and it'll fall apart. You'll create it and it'll fall apart, because you're not the version of you that can exist there. So 80% of it is changing ourselves into the version that's natural for.
So would you say a requirement of that, or a prerequisite, would be to ditch or lose your preconceived notions of what that you is going to even want, or at that point, because it's going to be a different you that's going to be looking at those things.
Well, people find out when they get it that they didn't want it. Um, yeah, there was an actor who was a mimic, and when he got to the top of mimicry, he decided he didn't want to mimic, and he never did it again, and he became an actor. And many people do that. They're a singer, and they found out that it wasn't really singing. They become a producer, or a writer or something else. So um, we're doing the best we can, and some people have two steps ahead illuminated, and some 20. We're all different, and we do the best we can to go forward. And the thing is, we're changing as we go toward our dreams. So we're not even the same person that started. And that takes us on all kinds of fun tangents, and we go places and meet people we didn't think we were going to experience. And nothing, nothing has happened like what I thought. And it's actually better, because when I was in my early 30s, I wanted to be famous psychic guy. I was like, I'm gonna have my own TV show or something. And that's what I thought I wanted. And that didn't happen. But something much more amazing happened, and my life is much, much more blessed than the life I was trying to make. I maybe lucky, or fate. I was saved from my small dreams.
Hmm. I Raquel and I we have a yearly event called the Big Vision and Vision. And one of the things I teach during that is when wanting to manifest whatever it is you want to manifest, to focus on the feeling you want to have rather than what you think is going to bring you that feeling, which is not only often a disappointment and not going to bring you that feeling, but it also limits the way that the universe, with all of its things, can bring you that feeling. To say it needs to come from this mansion or this white picket fence is not the ideal way to reach that you wish to call in. To really focus on how you want to feel and bring that feeling to you, which can happen in untold ways, surprising ways that your mind could never fathom. And it's really not your mind that's going to be doing these things. It's a real disconnect. So what would you say is one question you wish more of your students or clients asked you about supreme bright light or soul-based living, that
Mm.
maybe one that almost never gets asked but would change the depth of their journey if they did?
Well, my half serious answer is after maybe 10,000 private consultations, no one has asked me about being smarter. It's never come up. Um, but
What do
other
you
than
mean?
that, just kind of like no
Say
one
more about
said,
that.
how can I be smarter?
How can I be smarter? Yeah.
Yeah, never came up. Never was asked. And the spirit guides will answer anything far beyond my capacity. I'm just the microphone. And so, and I've had many beautiful questions and honorable questions and sacred questions as well. But I think I'm blessed in that I'm in the timeline where there's a couple of healing modalities already. Some of them are about 100 years old, some are a little older. So people mostly say, is it like Jore or is it like Reiki, for example? And it's not. And there's many other healing modalities, big and small, throughout the world. And I don't know if there's one thing that I would want people to inquire about or something like that. I think it's mostly just they have to experience it. All the talking won't do because once they see, and many people are surprised something's happening. Because I think even though people are very metaphysical, deep inside, some people think it's not real and they're just entertaining themselves. And then when they actually see a ghost or there's actually something paranormal that happens, they're really shocked. So I can tell they were hoping all this stuff was real their whole life. Why were they so surprised otherwise? And so some people are really, really shocked when they feel supreme bright light. Oh, this spiritual stuff is real. You can really feel it. And so it's a blessing that I was given something to offer to people that they have a body sensation and they also have sometimes an awakening. They have a discovery. Some answer comes to their lives that they've been waiting for. Of course, physical healing or emotional healing. And then many times it's something that we could call good luck or good fortune. Things just get easier and smoother. And that's a big part of it, actually, this good fortune.
Well, I'm excited to experience it uh, in December, and
Yes.
everyone will have an experience. After people do experience your transmission at Awake Shift, what would you love them most to carry back to their communities, whether or not they move forward with you with certification?
Mm. Yes, I think mostly that they have the blessing and that they are changed in such a way that they can then be of more benefit to their society, to their family, friends, and to their town, their city. And the healing is free. So I do not charge for the experience of getting the healing. I don't choose to. I'm not saying that future generations can't charge. I think there will be someone that charges $10,000 for the healing, and they'll work with, billionaires, and that's their destiny. And I think many people will do what I've chosen to do and have it be free. And then I charge for the training because that's days and weeks and months, and that's the only way that that can work.
Mm.
Unless I get this massive donation, uh, and then I will then make the training free too. I'd be happy to do that. So um, as people experience it in December at the wonderful event that you're producing, and thank you so much, Davidian, and your wife as well.
Mm, thank you.
So they will experience supreme bright light, and then I would say even just enjoy uh, the blessings that come from it.
Beautiful. Well, I want to thank you very much for sharing your time and your energy today.
Thank you.
It's, uh, it's been lovely, and I look forward to experiencing and co-creating with you, and would love to have you back on.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Take care and good journey.
Thank you, Davidian.
Thank you.
Blessings to everyone. Thank you.